I just went and gave that sick calf a shot of another shot of enrofloxacin and a shot of Banamine. He looks like he's about doing the same as he was yesterday. I don't think he got any worse. I don't think he really got any better. And when I gave him that shot of Banamine yesterday, it really helped him. It looked like it was really helping him. But I will say that his fever does not seem so bad today. All right, I was working on him this morning, and if they got a lot of fever, you can actually feel the heat coming off their body. But I would say that his fever's not as bad today, but he still has BRD. And the thing is, this is how much feed the animals got left over. So they're cleaning up the bunks a little bit. Some massive pigeon poops. You see this right here? It's a massive pigeon turd right there. But these pigeons, they go crazy for this cattle feed. And when they eat this cattle feed, they get these massive turds. So I'm gonna have to put a little bit more feed in the bunks. And I'll put a little bit more feed in the bunks. I like to keep some feed in the bunks, but I also don't want to be out here, giving a buffet to the pigeons, right? The pigeons, they go crazy for this stuff, and they poop all up in the food. You can see that. Right? I don't want to touch the pigeon poop if it's still not dry, but the pigeons go crazy for the food, and then they poop all over the food, and then the cattle eat it, and sometimes that gives them salmonella and E. coli and stuff like that too. And when they eat the feed, they get these massive pigeon poops. And so but the animal yesterday, I gave him, he's doing about the same as he was yesterday. And but when I was working on him this morning, I could feel that he had less heat coming off of his body. All right, that's what that's one thing that I noticed this morning. And I gave him another shot because I was like, he didn't decline. And I was talking about this, when I gave him the Zactran and I gave him the florfenicol, it was like after the first day, he visibly got worse every single day. He was visibly declining every day. And, yesterday and today, I don't think he really went downhill at all. And, he just about, but I mean, he's not doing good. All right, he's not doing good. And so I'm actually going to go and check the rest of my animals. But he's not doing good, okay? I'm just being straightforward, honest about it. You know me, I ain't going to lie to you about it. And so I gave him another shot of Banamine, and I gave him another shot of enrofloxacin. And the reason that I gave him another shot of Banamine, this is going to be the last shot of Banamine that I give him. I won't give him any more Banamine. The reason that I gave him the Banamine was because he is still having a large amount of inflammation. You could see a lot of discharge coming out of his face. His nose and his mouth. He's got a lot of discharge coming out of and he's breathing very hard. And so I gave him one last shot of Banamine. I won't give him any more Banamine. If anything, I'll give him one shot of enrofloxacin tomorrow. I'll see how he's doing. If he starts going any further downhill, I'm just gonna leave him alone. It's probably not gonna be able to save that calf. And so I think the rest of the calves are doing okay. I've been keeping a good eye on these calves, and you can take a look at the grass. I still got all this grass. And so, today I figured it would be a very realistic time to have a very practical conversation. Because I've always said, the whole thing, if we actually just take a look at it for what it is, if everything was easy, everybody would do it. And almost all the time, people quit because of the difficulty. And I actually talk about this all the time. The moment you make anything 10% more difficult, you effectively have 90% of the people quit. Effectively all the time. All right, and then now you're in a situation where it's like, if you want to learn how to grow grass like this, if you want to learn how to make money like this, if you want to learn how to run cattle like this, it effectively just becomes so difficult that nobody wants to do it. Effectively nobody. And I talk about this in terms of a realistic perspective, right? When you take a look at my situation, I effectively have some of the best results in the world. All right, it doesn't matter if we're talking about money. It doesn't matter if we're talking about grass. It doesn't matter if we're talking about cattle. It doesn't matter. All right, I effectively have some of the best results in the world. All right, and this is what my results look like. All right, I mean, it just is what it is. If you legitimately think otherwise, then go and find somebody who does better than me. Very, 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 very short list. Warren Buffett, right? I mean, Warren Buffett does better than me financially right now, right? I've actually read that, over the, over the last, nine or last 5 months, 14 out of the 15 billionaires of the top billionaires and actually lost money. And so, well, I mean, nobody, okay. And here's the thing. It's like, let's say that you have a stock in a company. You don't lose money if your shares go down, all right? And I talk about this stuff all the time, the idea of having good assets. If you have good assets, they're effectively never going to zero, right? Effectively never, all right? And I talk about things like the U.S. Treasury bond and the S&P 500. Even if the price of the stock goes down, it does not matter. Why does it not matter? Right? Because it's not going to zero. That's why, all right? And it produces a dividend, it produces a yield. If it goes down in price, buy more. You just got a discount. Congratulations. All right, I talk about this stuff all the time, right? It's not going to zero. The U.S. Treasury bond is not going to zero. And I was actually reading this, and now that I think about it, I think, because these major publishing or whatever major news companies are like, oh my God, over the last 2 weeks, the 15 richest people, this is how much money they lost. But they didn't lose money, okay? I mean, that's ridiculous. They did not lose money. Just because the shares of their company went down does not mean that they lost money. All right, you don't lose money unless you sell. And this is also why I said hold on to your assets forever, right? If the price of your asset goes down and you panic and you sell it, then you've lost money. But if you hold on to it forever, it produces you a dividend. You've bought a good asset. Then I mean, then you didn't lose money. Even if the price of the asset went down, you did not lose money. All right, this is very important. I talk about this stuff all the time, right? You just got a discount. You can buy more. And I still think that the U.S. Treasury bond is a good asset. It's still the U.S. Treasury bond. I talk about it. It's effectively a gauge for the interest rate of the entire economy. But I don't really want to talk about that stuff today. But I thought it was interesting because I found like several different big companies, or not companies, several different big news outlets that are like, oh my God, over the last 2 weeks, the richest 15 people in the country lost this much money. Warren Buffett is the only one that did not lose money. And I was taking a look at that and I was like, well, that's kind of ridiculous to even think about because they didn't lose money. All right, and I talk about this all the time. If the shares of your investment go down and you panic and you sell it, then you've lost money. But if you hold on to it forever and you have a good asset, it doesn't matter. It'll probably recover. At the end of the day, it'll give you a dividend. It doesn't matter. All right, it does not matter. All right, you did not lose money because your investment portfolio went down in value. You only lose money if you sell your shares. All right, or if the company bankrupts, right? And I talk about the broader assets, right? The U.S. Treasury bond and the S&P 500, stuff like that, they're not going to zero. If the U.S. Treasury bond goes to zero, if the bond market collapses, you have a lot more to worry about than your investment portfolio. There's going to be massive levels of inflation, massive. Like you're gonna have to pay like $1,000 for a loaf of bread. All right, so there are more important things to actually even think about, more important things to do. And so, let's have a very practical conversation. And, I don't think any of my animals are sick. I got this animal over here. He's sleeping like he's dead, but I don't think he's dead. Oh, no, he's not. He's just curled up in a ball. It looked like he was rolled over on his side. He's just curled up in a ball. But let's just have a very practical conversation, because the whole thing about this is that, when I talk about these things, if everything was easy, everybody would do it. And everybody wants to do the easy stuff, but you cannot pick and choose the things that you want to do. All right, when you actually look at having, especially if you want to do something like this. All right, and I talk about this all the time. I even said it in this video. When you take a look at what I'm doing, I effectively have some of the best results known to man. The best. I mean, some of the best. If you actually want to go and find somebody who does something like this, I mean, it might be like 1 in several billion. All right, if you're legitimately going to go and find somebody, it's like, this person can just, walk out into the world with nothing and start himself a multi, or herself, it doesn't matter, start themselves a multi-million-dollar business very rare. It practically does not happen. Right, and that's effectively the situation that I'm in. If like, even if I had, and I talk about even if everything went, even if all of my whatever, I lost everything, I could redo everything in 30 seconds. Right, and I talk about this. Farming does not cost me anything. Right, I talk about this in terms of a fundamental idea. Farming does not cost me anything. It makes me money. Right, you don't need money. You need to learn how to grow grass. You need to learn how to run cattle. You need to learn how to run a business. There are more important things, because the money is so trivial, it does not matter. My expenses this month have been $0. And I kind of gave myself bad juju by saying that, because now I got an animal with some mysterious death illness. But here's the thing. Let's talk about it in terms of a practical sense. Because, I talk about these things all the time. If everything was easy, everybody would want to do it. There's a reason why nobody does stuff like this. All right, and there's a reason why. It's because it's very difficult. All right, so let's have a very practical conversation. Let's say that all of my animals on this field died. Let's say all of them died, every single last one of them. Would I lose money? And this is all gonna, and everything that I do, it all kind of ties together, right? Because it doesn't matter, however, which way you cut the pie, it's still a whole pie. Because I have the animals on the leased property, right? I have the animals on the leased property. There's a natural population of Bermuda grass on that field. I fertilize that grass, and it has effectively spread across the entire field, and it's effectively it's practically an all-you-can-eat buffet. All right, the animals over there are conditioning properly. They're putting on weight, and the grass is growing. So let's say that I lost every single one of my animals here, every single last one of them. Would I lose money? Answer the question. Would I lose money? I have 15 animals on my leased property, and I have 18 animals here. Let's say that something like that happens, which is ridiculous to think about. I probably won't even lose another. I probably, I may lose that one animal, but none of these animals, I've been keeping a good eye on these animals. They're effectively eating. All right, they're eating all the, they're eating all the food. They don't look sick. They're not coughing. I don't have anybody coughing out here or anything like that. Nobody looks sick. So let's just have a very practical conversation. So let's say that I lost all of my animals on this field, and I have the 15 animals on the other field, right? Let's say I lost all of these animals. Would I lose money? Answer the question. I mean, maybe I'd lose $3,000, right? And I talk about this in terms of efficiency of a business, right? When I talk about the fundamental building blocks of my business, I don't have any equipment other than one tractor. I have one tractor. Effectively in terms of like brand new good equipment, I have one tractor. I don't have anything else. When I want to harvest grass, I just put cattle on it and they eat it. That's how I harvest my grass. All right, and when I grow grass, my grass looks like this. I graze this grass at like 3-4 animals an acre 24/7, and it's still like 1.5 feet tall. All right, my animals are conditioning. I mean, you can take a look at the animals, right? This animal going to market here in about 2.5 weeks, 3.5 weeks. Very well conditioned, right? Take a look at them. Very well conditioned. I raise animals to a commercial standard, the highest standard in the world. Commercial standards. It's very rare to see somebody just a farmer on a field by themselves raising commercial animals to a commercial standard. It is very rare. You're probably not ever going to see it other than me. It's very rare. It's very difficult. It's not simple. Right? There are guidelines that need to be followed. Right? There are goals that need to be achieved. Reaching these goals and reaching these objectives and reaching these guidelines are not simple. Right, you're going to have to develop an understanding of animal medication. You'll have to develop an understanding of animal feeds. All right, you'll have to develop an understanding of the commodity markets. What does a commodity animal even look like? How much do you budget for these animals? Right, it's not, there's a reason why people don't do this stuff. And I'm not saying that, you have to take it from if you can grow grass like this, and you can run a business like this, and you can run cattle like this, then this happens. And this is also what I'm saying, but it is almost okay. And I don't want to give myself bad juju. But me, losing money in the cattle business is not a realistic thing for me. It's not. And here's another way to look at it. We can cut the pie in, this way. If I lost every single one of my animals here, would I lose money? Right? I have the 15 animals on my lease property, right? I have the 15 animals on my lease property. I effectively have one animal per 2 acres. Right, there's a very large population of natural Bermuda grass on that field. I fertilized the grass and it's growing. I've actually taken a look at the animals and I can actually tell that the animals are conditioning. All right, would I lose money? Maybe I'd lose 3 grand. All right, because when I sell those 15 animals, I could take those 15 animals to 850 pounds. And when I sell those 15 animals, I can make whatever. Make enough money to buy whatever, 32 animals. I have 35 animals right now. Right? But that's what happens when you grow grass. Grass is practically free. All right, and I've even been talking about this. If we were going to just talk about growing grass, just grass, but because I've talked about 2 months ago I needed to buy antibiotics. Last month I needed to buy vaccinations. And so if we take the medication out of the budget, how much money did it cost me to just grow the grass on all 50 acres of land? How much did it cost me? About $700 a month. Right, that's legitimately what it cost me. So if it cost me $700 a month to do all of this, and I have 35 animals, that's $20 a month per animal. And for that $20 investment, I'm putting on like 100 pounds a month per animal. All right, the expenses are borderline zero. It's practically free. All right, I don't know how else to put it. It's practically free. Growing grass is so cheap. It is so cheap that it is practically free. And in all honesty, I could even bring home another 20 animals, and they wouldn't, and I could put 10 over here, and I could put 10 on the lease property, and they wouldn't even then they wouldn't eat all the grass. All right, so and I've talked about this in terms of growing grass, right? It costs about $15 a month per animal. All right, but here's the thing, and I put a lot of emphasis on this, and I talk about this all the time. Growing grass is not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Chances are you're going to need a lot of practice. You're not waking up tomorrow and doing this. All right, you're not waking up in 5 years and doing this. Nobody cares what you think. All right, if you're not practicing and you're not learning how to do this stuff, you're not just magically going to wake up one day and do it. You're just not. Chances are you're not some 200 IQ information sponge. Right, and chances are you're not. All right, nobody is. Even for me, it took me a long time. All right, it took me a long time. But that's another way to cut the pie. Even if I lost every single one of my animals here, every single last one of them, I would lose about 3 grand. All right, I don't know how else. It's the truth. When I sell my 15 animals, because here's the thing, because I got this property and I got the lease property, and let's say I lost all of my animals here, and the animals on the lease property, I decided that I was going to take them up to 850 pounds. And when I sold them at 850 pounds, every time I sold one animal, I made enough money to buy 2.2 animals or something like that, just over 2 animals. So in this situation, if I lost all 18 of my animals here, those 15 animals that I have left will effectively rebuy my entire herd. All right, that's another way to look at it. All right, and and the whole thing about this is that when you actually take a look at it, and I'm not looking to float my own boat. I don't, I don't know how else to put it other than I effectively, I don't know how else to. I'm not looking to float my own boat. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not some insecure, delusional moron. All right. When you actually, I've always said, take a look at the results, right? Take a look at the results. When you take a look at my, like me, and and I'm not floating my own boat, but let's just take a look at it for what it is, right? When I said I was going to do something, I did it. Very oftentimes, I actually outperform myself. Legitimately. I say, you know, I think I'm going to make 4,000 and I make 7,000. I say, oh, well, I think I'm going to make 7,000 and I make 10,000. Right? I say, oh, I think I'm going to make 10,000 and I make 12,000. Right? I mean, let's just be honest about it, right? I mean, I'm not bragging about it. I'm just being completely straightforward, honest about it. It happens a lot. I think I'm going to make 4,000 and then I make 7,000. I think I'm going to make 7,000 and then I make 10,000. Oh, I think I'm going to make 10,000 and then I make 12,000. All right, you know, I'm not bragging. I don't want to give myself bad juju about it. But it happens a lot. And, you know, I don't, you know, and if anything, you know, the most realistic way for me to put it is that, you know, I give you know, my grace to God about that. All right, because, you know, I didn't plan to do, okay. If I was planning to make 3,000, if I was planning to make 4,000, that was honestly what I was doing, right? And I make 12,000 and I make 7,000, then, you know, I can't take credit for that, right? Because, and here's the thing. And I've actually already even spoken about this, right? If I legitimately felt like sitting here for the rest of my life, because and I talk about this in terms of business. When you have a business, you effectively have a situation. I mean, you can have multiple situations, right? And when you actually take a look at the person who's running the business, it tells you a lot about the business. This is very important. And I've spoken about this in the past. When you have a business, the person who's running the business is very important, because there are effectively 3 ways that your business can go. Effectively every business. Number 1, you're going downhill very quickly, or even worse, you're going downhill slowly. It doesn't matter. If you're going downhill, then you're going downhill. All right. The worst thing that you can do is go downhill slowly. Because if you bankrupt when you're 65, that's significantly worse than you bankrupting when you're 40. Significantly worse. All right, but you effectively have 3 directions that any business can go. It can go downhill, it can go sideways, or it can go up. And what does it look like when your business is going sideways? You scrape money off the business forever. That's what your business looks like when you go sideways. Very realistic example of this is, let's say that, and I've already said that I've already decided that I will make more money. All right, I will make more money. I've already decided, I'll figure it out once I do it. What am I going to do with the money? I'll figure it out. But I am going to make more money. I would actually say that over the next 3 months, I just about double my income. So let's take a look at it for what it is. Let's say that you're in a situation where you're in category number 2. For business, right? You're scraping money off your business. And let me use myself as a realistic example of this. Because on this business, if I pulled $7,000 to $10,000 a month out of my business and I just used the money, my business would effectively run sideways forever. All right, it would effectively run sideways forever. I could go and spend $10,000 a month and it would not matter. All right, I could farm the 50 acres for the rest of my life. And when I farm the 50 acres, I'll even probably just do a little bit better. Maybe I do 10 or 20% better, but not 100%, right? So, let's say that I decided that I was going to run my business sideways, and I'm just going to scrape money off my business forever. And when you actually, if you actually go and, let's say that you have a business and you meet the owner of the business, everybody falls in one of these 3 categories. Effectively, everybody does. Everybody. Either you're going downhill slowly, or you're going downhill fast. It does not matter. You're still going downhill. Number 2, you're effectively going sideways. Your business is doing okay, and your big idea is to keep the business doing okay forever. That's effectively the idea. And the reason that you do that, the people do that, is to scrape money off the business. That's the big idea. What does scraping money off of a business look like? You effectively just run the business as it is forever. That's the big idea, okay? You run the business the way that it is forever, and then you scrape every dollar that you can off the business. So if I was using my farm as an example, what would it look like? And I've actually spoken about this in terms of a conceptual idea. But if I decided that I just wanted to run my business sideways forever, right? If that was what I decided that I was going to do, I could effectively pull about $10,000 a month off my business and just spend the money on whatever I wanted, and my business would run sideways. If in knowing me, I will probably spend about half of that money on the S&P 500. I would probably buy about $5,000 worth of the S&P 500 every month for the rest of my life. I probably would. All right, and I spoke about this, right? I talked about this in terms of a conceptual idea. If I felt like doing that, I could, and it would not matter. All right. If I felt like running my business sideways and scraping money off my business, every dollar that I could get off my business forever, then I could do that. That's category number 2. And category number 3 is a realistic idea, not some delusional fantasy. You cannot have a delusional fantasy and then call that your plan. Objective metrics. All right, the commodity market is at this. When I bring home animals, I will bring them home at this weight. When I bring home animals at that weight, I will precondition them by putting them on this medication and give them this feed to stimulate their rumen development. By the time the animals hit a market target weight, which I anticipate to be at about 650, 850, depending on how things are going, I anticipate that I will make this much money on them. And I use the feeder cattle market, the commodity market, to gauge this price. Very realistic, right? My life is a magical adventure, right? You cannot be in a situation where your life turns into an adventure. Your life, not an adventure. I mean, it's, not an adventure. That's not the right word. A Disneyland journey. If I just throw a Hail Mary into the middle of nowhere, then everything's going to work. It's borderline delusional. And I don't know how else to put it. It's practically delusional, okay? You cannot be in a situation where you're having delusional fantasies. I'm going to throw a Hail Mary into the middle of nowhere. It's going to work out in some magical fashion. And if I lie to myself about it, it'll make me feel better. And so that's what, and then, now you have a massive list of problems. You're insecure. You're delusional. Right? You're not even working on getting better. All sorts of problems, right? And I give you my information for free. When you actually take and I've always said that this is not an opinion, right? Like, I'm not magically, I'm not generating my grass with AI. I'm not photoshopping checks together and showing you these fake checks. They are real checks. I'm not, photoshopping my animals. All right, I'm not doing that. I don't know how else. I actually have the results. All right, I don't know how else to put it. All right, and I actually have the results. And that means something. Nobody cares about an opinion, especially not me. If it comes down to it, I'll just be rich by myself. All right, I don't know how else to put it. And the whole thing about the I don't save people. If you legitimately want to learn how to do something like this, I mean, you should focus on getting to the 10% mark. As long as you are going the right direction and you get to the 10% mark, you can practice for free. All right, you can practice for free, and if you can practice for free, that's effectively one of the most practical things that you can do. All right, and I've already, and I've given the best guidelines that I can, and I'm not some malicious, horrible person. The thing about me is that, I don't know how else to put it. Okay, so let's say, this video right now, 30 minutes, right? You know how much cash I made in the last 30 minutes? Let's talk about that. Cash in the last 30 minutes. Here's in terms of how much money I bring home. I bring home, okay, and here's the thing. I am actually betting that I actually double my income over the next 3 months. I have a very realistic idea for how I will do it. All right, I have a very realistic idea for how I will do it. I'm not asking for opinions. I don't care about your opinion. If anything, if a lot of people are going the complete wrong direction, trust me, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care about, opinions. Opinions aren't going to do anything. What are you going to do with your opinions, right? Make yourself feel good, right? Be insecure about it. I mean, what are you going to do with your opinions? I tell you straight facts. All right, I look at things in terms of an objective lens. Do I look like an insecure, delusional moron? Why does my grass just magically grow itself? Are my cattle fake? Are my checks fake? Right? I mean, take a look at it for what it is. I mean, it is what it is, all right? I actually have the results. When you take a look at what I'm doing, I borderline have some of the best results known to mankind. It's kind of a miracle that I started a commercial cattle farm on 10.5 acres and made $20,000 a month. That is kind of a miracle. Borderline like one in several billion, maybe even worse than that. It is kind of a miracle. All right, let's just take a look at it for what it is. It's kind of a miracle. I started my own cattle farm as a first generation farmer on a 10.5 acre field, and I made $20,000 a month doing it. That's kind of a miracle. All right, I don't know how else to put it. All right, it just is what it is. I'm not some delusional, insecure moron. My grass is not fake. My cattle are not fake. My checks are not fake. And here's the big idea. I would actually bet that I double my income over the next 3 months. All right, I don't know how else to put it. I'm not asking for opinions. I've already told you exactly how I'm going to do it, right? I've already told you exactly how I will do it. I will reinvest my earnings, because I sat there and I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? If I could scrape money off my business, right? I could scrape about, I'm net positive about $10,000 a month. I could scrape about $10,000 a month off of my business, and I could just go and buy whatever I want. All right, and it wouldn't even affect my financials. It wouldn't even matter. All right, I don't know how, it just is what it is. All right, when it just is what it is. I'm not bragging about it. I'm just being straightforward, honest to you about it. I could spend about $10,000 a month and it would not matter. Legitimately would not matter. It would not, my business would run sideways. I would pay for all of my bills and I could buy whatever I wanted. But I've actually decided that what I will do is reinvest my earnings. All right, I will reinvest my earnings. I will put the money back into my business and I will grow my business. I will effectively just run more cattle. I've talked about this. If I legitimately feel like, whatever. If I legitimately feel like I need to make more money or whatever, which I don't think about. I don't think about making more, I do think about making more money, but I don't need to make more money. That's the thing. It's like I'm not some desperate, delusional person, right? I've decided that I will make more money. And how am I going to do that? Am I going to sell my soul to the devil? Am I going to go and come up with some worthless plan? Am I going to, no, I'm not. What am I going to do? I'm just going to farm more land. All right, I'm just going to farm more land. I will farm more land. That's the big idea. All right, and that's the whole thing about this is, it's like me, I'm not, this is not fake. I don't know how, nobody cares about an opinion. I actually do it. That's the big thing. I actually do it. It's kind of a miracle. All right, and when you actually take a look at it, it is kind of a miracle, right? I mean, let's just be honest about it. I'm not bragging about it, and here's the thing. I actually give away all of my information for free. I give away all of my information for free. Why not? Why not? I give you all of my information for free. I'm not some horrible, malicious person. Here's how I started the business. Here is the kind of cattle that I buy. Here's how I budget for my animals. Here's how I grow my grass. Here's what I do with the money. Here's how much money I make. I show it all to you, right? And at the end of the day, the reason that I do that is not to brag. I don't brag. I don't boast. I don't even care if you died. All right, I show it to you because it's the truth. And if somebody told me this when I was 20 years old, when I was, whatever, it would have been phenomenal. I would have been like, this is incredible. I can go out right now and buy myself a 20-acre piece of land for $1,000 a month, put fertilizer on it. It would cost me about $500 a month. And granted that I actually learned how to farm, learned how to grow grass, and learned how to run cattle and run a business. If granted that I learned how to do these things, I could actually run probably 70 cattle at a time on this field, this 20-acre field, right? If like how that would have been incredible to know, right? And that's the truth. All right, if you have a field and it's 20 acres and you cover it with fertilizer, granted that you utilize the right fertilizer, and I've talked about this, like if we're going to talk about fertilizer, right? Does I'm going to put 1717 on my field sound like a reasonable thing to do? I'm just going to do that all the time. Does that sound like a reasonable thing to do? No, right? Then you're going the right direction. As long as you're going the right direction, it does not matter. All right, because you're not going to get the results. The only thing you can do is go the right direction. If you go the right direction, then that's all you can do. I'm going to, fertilize my field when it's, when the soil is bone dry and I'm not going to have any rain for 2 weeks. Does that sound like a good idea? No, that's a horrible idea, right? Then you're going the right direction, right? I mean, dry soil is like beef jerky. All right, it takes a long time for it to rehydrate. All right, you have negatively, soil is negatively charged. And when you have fertilizers, they're either negatively charged or positively charged. And when you have a positively charged fertilizer, you have different types of soil as well, right? I talk about this, right? You have sandy soil, like at a beach. You have silty soil, like I've never really actually even seen a whole lot of silty soil. Almost all of the soil that I see is either clay, or it is like a clay loam, or it's like sand. All right, I'm sure that there was a lot of high organic matter silty soil somewhere, but I don't, I've effectively, all of the soil that I've seen has effectively been like clay loam, heavily clay, but I don't really travel a lot either. So it's either sand or it's like clay loam. And if you have sandy soil is like glass. It doesn't really have many, it's very smooth, right? I talk about this okay. So imagine, and I remember I spoke about this, right? Like when I grab a handful of soil, right? This right here is not one big piece. It's not. It's a bunch of little pieces jammed together. And how do you know that? Because you can break it apart, right? This is not one giant piece, right? I mean, lots of little pieces jammed together, right? And when you have sand is effectively, it's like glass, and if you have I've even spoken about this, like if you go onto a field and it's like clay loam and you reach down and you grab the soil and the soil just disintegrates, then that's a sign that your soil is not doing very good. All right, you should stop plowing your soil, and you don't want your soil turning to dust. If you're plowing your field so much that your field is turning into dust, that's not good. You should stop plowing your field. All right, but plowing your field does not damage your field, okay? And I've already spoken about this in terms of soil. When you have soil and it sticks together like this, why does that happen? Because there is a protein excreted by bacteria called glomalin. And that glomalin acts as a sticky substance. All right, and that glomalin is very good for the soil. It holds your soil together. If you're effectively pulverizing your soil all the time, then you're ripping that bacteria, you're ripping the soil apart. That's not good. If you plow your field once or twice a year, you're not really going to damage your field. If anything, you'll actually improve the quality of your field because you are putting air back into your soil. And when you put air back into your soil, you can actually feed the microbes. The microbes will actually do better. Plowing your field one or two times a year actually improves your soil quality. And it also allows you to put negatively charged fertilizer into the soil profile where it can actually come into contact with the root material of the plants. All right. No, the whole thing about soil, right? Soil, and how do you know if your soil is good? How do you find information about your soil? If you want to find pH data, how do you do that? If you want to figure out if you have a clay loam soil, how do you do that? You go on the internet and go on a website called Soil Web, and you look up your GPS coordinates. If you have a phone and you go to Soil Web and you just press use my location, it will give you your GPS coordinates on the spot. All right, I mean, that's how you figure it out. That's how you find the pH data. That's how you find out, if you have clay loam or et cetera. And, and in terms of mineral profiles, how do you figure out the mineral profiles of your field? How would I suggest that you do it? You walk across your field and find some sort of a broadleaf plant. If you can find a clover plant and something, let's use my field as an example. I have several sunflower plants in the back of the back of the field, right? I have several sunflower plants in the back, and I actually have a lot of clover plants in the front. So when I walk across my field, I take a look at the clover plants, and then I take a look at the sunflower plants. Why? Because they're broad-leafed. It's much easier to diagnose a mineral deficiency on a broadleaf plant than it is something like a grass. Much easier, significantly easier, unbelievably easier. All right, it's much easier. So that's how you figure out the mineral profiles of your field. Let's say that you walk across your field and I've already said phosphorus is very easy to diagnose. So are calcium and sulfur, right? Because calcium and sulfur are immobile nutrients. When the plant has a calcium and a sulfur deficiency, it is not able to move that calcium and sulfur into its new growth. So if you have a calcium or a sulfur deficiency on your field, right? If you have a calcium or a sulfur deficiency on your field, the new growth of the broadleaf plant will exhibit the symptoms. It's very easy. And if I have a pH of 7.6 on my field, I probably do not have calcium deficiencies, because the molecules, the minerals that are most responsible for raising the pH of a soil are what? Calcium, magnesium, potassium, and salt. There's also another one, so, I forget the fifth one, but you don't really even have to worry about salt if you're not near a beach. Calcium, magnesium, potassium. If I have a pH of 7.6, I probably don't have calcium deficiencies, all right? And I have a clay loam soil. So if the new growth of the plant is exhibiting signs of mineral deficiency, then it's probably a sulfur deficiency. Very simple, right? Very simple. And let's say that you go across your field and you actually diagnose a phosphorus deficiency. You take a look at your plant and you say, oh, this plant is legitimately turning red. It must have a phosphorus deficiency. Should you just put phosphorus on your field? Probably not. Why? Because if you think about it in terms of a broader sense, phosphorus is like the least utilized out of the 3 macronutrients. For every molecule of phosphorus that is metabolized by your plant, it will also probably metabolize 5 units of nitrogen and 3 units of potassium. Something like that. Granted that you're growing grass. If you're growing a broadleaf plant, it will probably use something closer to a 517 or a 515. Most of them, except for something like a tomato or a potato. All right, very, very, none of this stuff. And here's the thing. When I give you this information, I've even told you this in the past, but this information is probably not going to change. Why is it not going to change? Because it's the truth. If something happens like, the magnetic field of the earth, like the polarity of the earth changes, or something happens that causes chemical bonds to restructure themselves, if something like that happens, then the information will change. But in terms of as far as we know it, unless something is proven different, and if something gets proven different, like if it turns out like, oh my God, the soil is not negatively charged, it turns out the plants are not metabolizing minerals out of the field. It turns out that the plants are not metabolizing minerals out of the environment. It turns out that that's not happening. If something like that legitimately happens during my lifetime, I will tell you. But as far as we know in terms of humanity, as far as we know, plants are metabolizing minerals out of the field. All right, sugar is effectively created by the plant via chloroplast, and that acts as an energy source for the plant. As far as we know, that it is what it is, and it's probably not going to change. All right, and the minerals are absorbed in ratios. All right, it is what it is. It's probably not going to change. If it does change, I will let you know. All right, all of this stuff is just straightforward information. It's not complicated. All right, and as long as you are going the right direction, it does not matter, because you're not going to get the results. Not yet. I mean, you will legitimately if you legitimately get to the 10% mark, you can practice for free. And if you can practice for free for a very long period of time and you work on getting better every single day, then one day you can make it too. All right, and because this is not an opinion for me. All right, this is not an opinion. I don't know how else to tell you. My grass is not fake. My cattle are not fake. My checks are not fake. I'm not some horrible malicious person telling you the wrong thing. I'm telling you everything that I know for free. When you actually take a look at what I'm doing, I have some of the best results known to mankind. Legitimately, I do. If you find someone who's doing better than me, then let's see it. All right, you probably don't even have enough information to even have a correct opinion. A lot of times, and when you go and you look at some of these people, I mean, I don't know how else to tell you, but there's no hiding it from me, okay? I actually do this stuff. If I see a person who's farming and they're oh my God, I got 250 mama cows on my 1,000 acres of land, and they're that. They're technically closer to being homeless than to making as much money as me. I don't know how else to tell you. You actually need to develop an idea of a balance sheet, right? Take a look at their equipment. Take a look at how many cattle they have. Take a look at are their cattle being raised to a proper standard, etc., etc. Take a look at it. All right, because me, I actually do this stuff. I actually, I can actually take a look at a farm, and within 3 seconds, I would understand what the balance sheet looks like. I would. And you don't want to be in a situation where you're looking at somebody that you think is cool and whatever, and it turns out that person's a bum, because now it's like, you think that it's cool to be a bum. All right, oh, well, I don't use fertilizer because I can't afford fertilizer, and fertilizer doesn't do anything. And wrong. All right, that's very fertilizer damages the environment. Wrong. Fertilizer improves your environment, granted that you utilize it properly. All right, I don't know how else to tell you this. All right, you don't want the wrong information. If you have the wrong information, if you go 180 degrees in the wrong direction, if you legitimately have the wrong information, the longer that you have the wrong information for, the more permanent the damage has become. Effectively, that's what's happened. That's what's going to happen. And you don't want to be in that situation. You want the right information. Plants are metabolizing minerals out of the field via their just natural biological process, right? Absorbing these minerals through their roots, interacting with the sunlight, creating sugar via the chloroplast. And then now, that's the kind of stuff that you need to understand. Now, I'm not going to say you need to understand. You could die tomorrow. I don't care. That's more of the correct information. All right, you really want to be in a situation where you actually have the right information. If you are going the wrong way, if you legitimately have the wrong information, and in a worst case scenario, you will actually take people down with you. That's the worst part. If you have the wrong information and you legitimately have you will actually start taking other people down with you. All right, you need to have, the right information is very important. It's very important. If you have the wrong information, the longer you have that wrong information for, the more permanent the damage has become. All right, and when you take a look at this, and you take a look at what I'm doing, I don't know how else to put it, but you're not gonna make it. Not yet. If you legitimately commit to the idea, and you get to the 10% mark, and you start practicing for free, you start developing this idea that you can practice for free, and then you practice over a very long period of time, 10, 15 years, something like that, and you practice every single day, and you work on getting better every single day, then one day you can make it too. When you take a look at what I'm doing, I effectively have some of the best results known to mankind. It doesn't matter if we're talking about cattle, it doesn't matter if we're talking about grass, it doesn't even matter if we're talking about money. I effectively have some of the best results known to mankind. It's kind of a miracle that I started a commercial cattle farm on a 10.5 acre field and started making $20,000 a month. That is kind of a miracle. It is. It honestly is. This might be the only chance that you ever get to see it. I raise my cattle to a commercial standard, the highest standards. I grow my grass. I show you what my grass looks like. I even tell you exactly how I grow it. And my checks, I show you my checks. It's not debatable stuff. It's not an opinion, right? This is flat out honest information. All right, I don't know how else to put it. All right, it just is what it is. My life is not a Disneyland adventure. I'm not giving you my opinion. It's a statement of a fact. All right, I don't know how else to put it. And that's it for me today, YouTube. You have a good one.